Hey, and welcome to the stress module, assignment one. This is kind of what you're looking at here, the Holmes Wright life stress inventory. And as you proceed through, this is the PDF doc. As you proceed through this and you're giving value to specific things that actually have occurred in your life in the previous year, that's what the instructions tell us to do. I want you to know that you're kind of tallying these numbers, getting this all put together, writing down your total, and you're kind of looking for what your total is and then comparing it up down here at the bottom. So as you do that, that's kind of the easy part. The second part is you're going to go back and you're going to repeat that SWOT analysis. And remember, this is what you are doing, and this is an analysis of that. So how do you do that? Well, you apply certain things here to your strengths if they're not occurring in your life. A great example for me is I make it a point that my marriage is number one, right behind my relationship with God, of course, but that's number one. And so number two right here, this number two thing, divorce, is not going to happen. So I'm counting that as a strength, that I'm not going to let a divorce happen, and then I'm going to strength number three for marital separation. I'm just not going to let that happen. I'm going to give so much value to my marriage that I'm not going to let it happen. Now, obviously, I can't control my wife in every facet, and I can't be sure that these two things wouldn't happen as 100%. But my strength is that it hasn't happened yet, and that we work so hard together that that's probably not going to happen. And so I'm counting it as a strength. I suppose I could count it as a threat, but I've got something better down here, so I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not even going to give that a chance to sprout with me. Another thing is, I do not plan on breaking the law, so I'm going to count another strength as a detention in jail or other institution. This is a strength, and I'm just writing that down, that I'm not going to have a divorce. I'm not going to have marital separation. I'm not going to be detained in jail, because those are things that I think of in my normal life, that I'm not participating in behaviors that would let me have that, let that happen. So this is what I do. Now, my weaknesses, this is a little different. And what I want to do is I want to kind of come down here and talk to you about some of these weaknesses. I talked in chapter one in that video at the very end about having to work through the summer. Well, a weakness is a major business readjustment for me, is that I've worked this summer. And so that's what I'm counting that as. And I'm clicking the points on this major business readjustment. Another weakness that I have is that I recently lost my dad, and so I'm tying this death of a close family member in as a weakness. Those are things, remember, they're negative, but they have happened, and so I've got to look at those. Another weakness that I have here, to give you my third, is that I am looking at an outstanding personal achievement here, and that's that report that we talked about in the first one. So there's my strengths. There's some of my weaknesses. I want to also take a look at some of my own opportunities and the way I've kind of scheduled these in here. But I have an opportunity. Just give me a minute here to count major change in responsibilities at work. I'm counting that report as an opportunity to really grow personally, but also professionally. I'm trying to make it actually be something that has a positive spin on it and not just all negative. Another opportunity that I really feel like has to come in is that at the conclusion of that report, I kind of have plans on maybe starting a doctoral program. And so I would be beginning formal schooling again. I'm going to count that as an opportunity, though. It's not something that has happened, but if it does happen, it has a positive effect in my life. And then the last opportunity that I would look at here is, and you have to understand that I view debt as a very bad thing, and so I'm not taking on a loan. And obviously I can't guarantee that I may not have to have a loan, but I'm not going to look into it. So I'm counting this number 37 as an opportunity for me because I'm not going to plan on doing that. Now, I have to say that there are several things in here that could be considered threats. One of the ways I want to do is I want to take a step off of the Kindle look here on threats necessarily, and I want to give it back to you. Because I want to address a few things. You have to understand that that SWOT analysis means you are looking at things that have happened, and then you're looking at things that could happen. That's your opportunities and threats, but your things that have happened, your strengths and your weaknesses. If you're not married or in a relationship, then you really can't put in anything that has to do with marriage on your SWOT analysis. So just leave that out. You can't even pick that fruit. Here's what you can look at though. How are you feeling about number 12 and number 13? That's pregnancy and sexual difficulties. These both come from being sexually active. So if you're sexually active, then you have a opportunity, but also a potential threat to becoming pregnant. Now, some of you are like, no, that has already happened. Well, then you have to count that as a strength or a weakness. For me, I have 4 kids. I love kids. I'd have more if I could. That's a strength. But it could be in your situation in life that it's a weakness. And so you have to look at it that way. Sexual difficulties. And here's the thing, if you're not abstinent, if you're sexually active, then you run the risk of sexually transmitted infection. And that's just fact. We can't change that. It's a threat that could happen. And so you need to perceive it that way. And you might list it that way, that this is a potential threat that I have, that I could develop sexual difficulties from sexually transmitted infection. And we're going to give this a whole module to talk about soon, but there's some insight into where we're going. Now, you build your own 3 strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats out of this. But just be aware that you need to modify it in the ways that you need to do to make those out and justify them out. That's what I'm looking for. That's how I'll grade it. Your criterion is, did you meet it by giving rationale and saying, this is why it's a strength, this is why it's a weakness. If you just put it in there and I can't tell, then I can't be sure and I'm not going to give you credit for that. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, make sure you call me or email me. See you soon.